Welcome to Two Deep Hokies Under the Influence, a Sons of Saturday podcast. I'm your host, Pete B, and I've got my co-host, Sam Jesse, here with me. Spring practice is upon us, Sam, and I'm going to need you to kick us off with a cheers.
I think it's just to that. Like, this is the unofficial start to the season for college football nerds. Like, this is when it begins. This is step one. Step two is magazine season, but step one is spring practice. So everyone's 0-0. Everyone's 0-0 right now, and that feels good. So here's to no news being good news, and here is to no injuries, and here is to nothing but coach speak and positivity for the next few weeks.
Cheers to that.
I still haven't done my pour. I got 2 beers tonight for the people. 2 beers.
It's also baseball opening day. And so
yes, it is.
I've got a baseball themed beer. I've got a McAdoo's glass, St. Patty's Day glass. I know we're past the holiday, but it's still March. Oh, you got Hokie House. See, we're doing things over here, man. This is great. All right. So, yes, we're going to get to spring football. We're going to go over all the latest notes we have on the football team. I've got 5 questions for Sam that he will answer, and then I will subsequently answer my own question. And a couple other things on football, including Pro Day was yesterday. Not too much into that. It looked like APR had a hell of a vertical, as well as Felton.
Yeah.
That's
cool.
I mean, there was a lot of, I was surprised by the number of guys testing out for Pro Day. It was a big crew of dudes.
Yep.
And then basketball portal entries and Whit Babcock's comments. We are going to get to that after football. We'll talk about the ladies basketball a little bit after the men, what happened at the wrestling championships that I attended, and then Diamond Sports at the end. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Liking our video very much helps us. And if you also want to rate us on Spotify, that would also help us if you are listening on that app, because I think we're at about 60 ratings, but we can do better than that. So we appreciate you hitting all those things, but let's hop right into football, Sam. Started just last week. We got some news on the format, which is going to be even less like a game than it has been, it sounds like.
And like that might be a good thing. Because when the more it does feel like the more that they try to make it like a game, the less useful it looks. I don't think you need to be a football coach to see that on the field. So they got to do what's best for their development. There's only so many practices you get. You can't waste them. And I think, as we're going to talk about a little later, it's a lot of spots up for grab this year. So I think you want to get as many reps for as many guys as possible this spring.
Yeah. So what the wordage was from Andy Bitter had this, and I think he might have gotten this from Wade or somebody else, but they're going to put together clips and interviews from the game on ACC Network, but it won't be straight up full 11-on-11 action if you're watching on TV. Now, you might get some of that if you're in attendance, and they are charging money this year, which I think we're all okay with, because most of it's not a lot of money that they're charging. I think the parking is offending people more than the ticket prices. But all that money is going to go into the program, and hey, we need money, right? We always need money, and we're all willing to donate $10 at the door to attend the spring game. So if you're attending in person, it sounds like you're going to get a little bit better football action than you will from TV. Okay, so roster news and position changes. There was just a couple here. Caleb Spencer is going to move to inside linebacker rather than playing the star. I also saw Cam Fleming, I think he was a safety, is now a linebacker. And Devin Alves moves from the DB room to wide receiver. What are your thoughts on Caleb Spencer moving?
Yeah, I think we can talk about Caleb Spencer a little bit more later as well, but I think it's a really interesting move. I mean, this is a guy who was recruited to Miami and played safety and special teams. So to have him do this move from like a pure free safety, strong safety guy to the star linebacker, which is like a hybrid, to now going inside to playing like the Mike, like that's quite the change. And we'll talk about it a little bit later. I think that's definitely the most interesting position change news out of Virginia Tech this spring.
Yes. And between the scheme changing and the personnel we have on hand, by my estimation, we're not going to have the star. So they're more or less eliminating Caleb's position.
Mhm.
And I'm not trying
Yeah.
to kill maybe the conversation we have later on it, but we also hired at the edge coach that we've talked about. So like I think we're going to see more edge and three high safeties than we will be seeing any star
A
like player.
and also look who's dealing with linebackers now, Xavier Debe,
Mhm.
who played in a 4-2-5 system where, I think at points Virginia Tech there, depending on their opponent, it was really like he and Vince Hall were your linebackers, and then you had like basically a third safety back there, whoever it might have been at the time. So I think there is this little bit of move, and we talked about this being a potential if they were going to make a DC change. Do they get away from a traditional 4-3 because they couldn't find three linebackers to go on the field at one time? So how do you fix that? Well, you go to a formation that only needs two.
Yes, and there's a lot of things you can do with the various formations, and we'll get into that. As far as who's limited and who's out for spring, out would be Overton, Gabe Williams, and Keelan Brody Adams. And I think you said today Pearson Prelu, his son, uh,
PJ.
PJ Prelu, is out for the spring as well.
I think so. Yeah. I think he's on the he's in non-contact, I believe. So I think he's non-contact all spring. He might be
Okay.
going through drills and stuff like that, but I think blue jersey is what they do. Uh, I wouldn't expect to see him a lot. He's recovering from a pretty nasty knee injury, but he's someone who's like on the up and up, on the mend. Gabe Williams, of course, had a pretty horrific injury there, and so
Yeah.
he'll be his healing time is a bit longer. We'll see if he's available this fall. I mean, that depending on the healing process can be pretty brutal. I've had a few doctors explain that to me, and it doesn't sound fun. And then I'm not sure about Brody Adams. You're hoping that's precautionary to a point to keep him out all spring, but my guess is it's not great news.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about it in the long term. I just think that he needed to have some kind of procedure from what I've heard, and I don't quote me on that, but yes, Overton, and it's Overton is a guy we thought we might use as a freshman, but nevertheless, he was going to be a freshman,
Eh,
and so it's not a major loss, especially considering how much we brought in the portal, and some of
mhm.
those other guys that were limited for spring, as we said, PJ, Coney, Hawkins are also running backs. However, they were working the other day, and Pry had some good things to say about them. The other guys limited were Tucker Holloway, Jordan Bass, and I think it's the CB, Christian Williams. Am I getting that
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So, although they're limited, they are practicing. And I think of all those things, if I had to just sum up my thoughts, is that Keelan is someone we were hoping to be like maybe a starting wide receiver next year. So,
Mhm.
him missing all of spring is disappointing. Gabe, again, like highly rated guy, but we knew he was going to be out for an extended period of time. So not too many surprises, and these guys that are limited are still working. So I'm not
Yep.
nothing too crazy
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. And we're also Terry and Stewart, the top running back transfer they got out of Bowling Green. He is not with Virginia Tech this spring. He's finishing his degree at Bowling Green. So he'll be with Virginia Tech in the summer. So that's another guy in the running back room that you're not getting. So
And
I
could
would,
very well be the starter at that position when he
yes, I
comes
mean,
in.
he probably will be. So I would temper any expectations you see out of running the football because we're not going to see Kyron run the ball this spring, and we're probably not going to see the top two running backs run the ball this spring. So
Well,
a
I
lot
wanted
of
to
throwing the
go
ball.
to the latest comments from Pry because he did talk about the running backs. Did you have any takeaways from his most recent media availability?
Um, my takeaway was that there wasn't a massive takeaway. Like this team did what they did in the transfer portal. They brought in some new coaches, and it does seem to be a very much feeling out period for these first few practices. That's the vibe I got. And even in talks, you heard Aiden Green, who is a pretty articulate guy, a wide receiver. He talked about how, hey, this is all about new terminology, new scheme, new playbook. It's learning. It's dealing with new coaching. It's all of that right now. I think if you're going to get some interesting news on, hey, this player's looking really good or this guy needs to improve, you're probably going to get that next week.
Yeah. On Green's comments, Aiden Green, he did talk about the new Ferg workouts. And he said that when you leave the gym, he doesn't want you to have anything left in the tank. And you kind of would think that's what it always is supposed to be, but it seems that it is that way now, and so
Yeah.
that's good. And he said it was brutal. So
Yeah.
that's kind of what we want to
Ooh.
hear from that. As for Pry, and then there was a Pry video put out by 247 and Colby, and then Colby had some commentary. So what I got from that was Cameron Seldon kept coming up. The running back that's now wide receiver on our roster. He's been impressing, made some nice catches. Price said he's a worker. He's more mature now. And so I think he's going to end up contributing in the wide receiver room. And then the other Green that we got from Wake Forest,
Mhm.
he, great young man, according to Pry, acclimated to the team easily and has been very impressed with him. That's Donovan Green.
What
And so
Yeah,
he was a
Donovan.
big time player when healthy.
Mhm. Yes, no, that's exactly what I was gonna say, like, when Donovan Green's healthy, he's a very good ACC wide receiver, and so that is I think if you're looking at a potential X factor for Virginia Tech through the spring going into next year, it's probably Donovan Green,
Mhm.
because we know what Aiden Green has, and I think, we're all very excited about that talent, but Donovan Green has proven talent at the wide receiver position. So I think, with the two Greens, we'll see what you get healthy wise out of Brody Adams. Chance Wiggins is a guy that we're really excited about who has all the tools at wide receiver. Tucker Holloway, if he's back to 100% health, we know what he can do. Benji Gosnell at tight end, we feel good about. Like, the pass catchers, you start to feel pretty good about them if they can stay healthy throughout spring and fall camp.
Yeah. Then Pry went on to talk about the safeties, and there's a lot of new safeties. He mentioned Flowers, how his IQ is off the charts. Is he the one that's from Rice, Tyson Flowers?
Yeah, if you went to Rice, I feel like your IQ should be off the charts. Yeah.
That's true. Smart kid school. He said Koval can run and strike. Cash is just a good all around safety. And then Ellis has nice speed and is a good athlete. So a little
I
commentary on all the safeties
I
there.
really like Ellis. If you're a sicko and you're watching some late night Mountain West football, Ellis can move. Like, he's a very much like a center fielder type player. Like, he's going to be on one hash mark, and then blink of an eye he's going to be on the other hash mark. So I'm excited about him in this zone heavy scheme that they're going to be running.
A lot of variety, a lot of versatility from that group of safeties. Bell and Jonkum, the two defensive ends were mentioned. He said Bell is very hard to block, and James Jonkum is bigger and stronger than expected. And we saw a picture of him at some point during the coverage, and he does look quite large. And I also noticed in that picture, Sam, and this is reading way too much into one still
Let's know
image.
this is the time of year for it. Let's
He
go.
was standing up, meaning and it played it perfectly into the narrative I'm expecting. More stand up defensive ends, outside edge play.
Yeah, I think that's something that you're going to see, not only kind of in modern college football, where you need your defensive ends to, play the read option a bit more, play on the outside a bit. I think it's also they want these guys to be really versatile. We saw APR this year. He had a ton of sack numbers, but we also saw him kind of like drop back and cover the near flat a little bit, try to like get in the way of that RPO. I think they're going to keep doing that because, one, it helps work in college, but two, it gets these guys ready for the NFL. And if you can go to a recruit and saying, "Hey, look what we're doing with our defensive ends. This is very NFL like," that could be a plus.
Yeah.
So I feel really him and Bell are going to be really interesting because they're both proven at the like mid-major G5 level as very good players. They're two of those guys who are taking the step up. And it's like, is this a transfer portal water finds its level type thing? Or is this they're biting off more than they can chew and going up a level, they're just going to be normal guys? I think that's a big storyline for the Tech defense.
Yeah, it really is. Couple last notes on the guys. Altuner looks good at center right now. I don't know if he'll be center starter on day one, but that would be where I put my money. Wiggins' body looks good. Looks like he's put on some mass and made some good contested catches. Copeland is back, healthy and energized, which
Awesome.
love to hear that. That dude is an absolute monster in the weight room, and if he can put it together on the field, he would be good for us. So, pretty nice reviews coming out of camp. The one thing Price said about Coney, because even though Coney was listed as limited, he said he made Caleb Woodson miss on a play the other day, and Caleb's one of their better players, and so that was nice to see. When Coney played in the Syracuse game, we definitely saw some nice things from him.
There are flashes with Jeremiah Coney, and I think you see why he's a guy who, coming out of Hermitage High School in Richmond, they were always have talked him up. It's always been positive things about Coney, and you see those flashes. I don't think they got that consistency. And I definitely think we'll talk about this a little later too, but they brought in a lot of running backs, I think, to say, okay, which one of these guys sticks, because they need consistency there.
All right. I have some height and weight stuff I want to talk about. Then I'm going to ask you some questions. But before I do that, I want to say that the 2 Deep Hokies Under the Influence podcast is brought to you by Roback, the performance activewear designed for those who crave activity. They put out the new exciting white quarter zip. There are polos, but quarter zip and hoodie with the VT right in the middle of the hoodie. It's gorgeous. Go to our Twitter, use code 2DeepVT. You can find the link on Twitter or on Instagram, but just go to roback.com. Use code 2DeepVT for 20% off your order. If you've already ordered using your regular email, use your work, use your wife's, use your boyfriend's, whatever it is, get that discount again. They have the hoodies, the tees, the quarter zips, the shorts, the joggers, the tennis stuff, the girls, little dresses. They got so many good things on that site. So go to roback.com, load up your card, use code 2DeepVT. All right, some weight updates here, Sam. Pop coming in at over 200 pounds. Davy almost 200 pounds. Caleb Woodson, and this is a key one here, 230. And I know watching him last year played
Doesn't look,
but he didn't look 230 last year. So I'm hoping that's for real.
Yeah, I mean, Caleb Woodson might be on dog watch. I'm going to officially put Caleb Woodson on dog watch.
I like it.
His progression year over year has been so impressive. I think he performed last year in a system that I don't think put him in the best position to succeed every single down. I'm really excited about Caleb Woodson, and Pry talked about that in kind of his spring introductory conference. Like, this is his team now. He's a guy that we recruited. He's been brought up in this culture. Like, this is his team now. He mentioned Aiden Green as well on the offensive side. Like, he's the dude now. And I think he can be that
a year
guy.
ago at Spring Jam. Do you remember talking to his mom for a minute when she came in?
Yeah.
The way she, because we were working the door, the way she was talking about him and like his spot on the team, like it was easy to see why he's ascended to the position he's been in.
Yeah, like Caleb Woodson grew up with that. You can definitely tell. And I think the tenacity he plays with and how he attacks football is rooted in an early age, I'm going to assume.
Yeah.
And so it's really exciting. Like, that's what you want from your linebacker. And that's what this team, I think, is kind of desperate for this year. Like, they're going to need that. They're going to need to win games with things other than pure talent. And Caleb Woodson, although he is very talented, plays with that energy and plays with that style that can, punch above his weight class. Mm-hmm. Although I don't know, but 230, that's a pretty big dude. 230 is a big linebacker.
And if he punches above that weight, that's even better. So moving to defensive ends, we got some heavy defensive ends. Now, Ben Bell comes in at 235. He's only 6'1", but he wins on motor. But some of the other guys like Burgos, Abbey, Dandy, Stevens, Jonkum, they're all 250, 260. Like some good size to these edge players. So curious how this scheme is going to showcase some of that size.
Yeah, Burgos is the guy who I think he's on my list later, but like you want to see something from Burgos this year, right? His physical tools are off the charts, and his splash plays are splashy, right? He can make a lot of big plays. You just need to see it down after down.
I thought we were going to get some last year.
Yeah, I did too. I kind of thought it'd be a little bit more. I think, you can put him in the camp of Jaden Keller as a guy who, when he makes those big plays, you're like, wow. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, he had kind of a crappy game. And it's you can't have that. You need solid, consistent play week after week after week. So, if he's a guy who physically has the size, speed, strength, and then you just got to put the mental side of the game together, you could see a big step up there.
I'm not going to highlight every weight on the team, I promise, but there's just a couple more I wanted to get to. Laws at defensive tackle. You remember he's the shorter guy, comes from
Mhm.
DeMatha, but another high motor guy. How much do you think he weighs? Did you happen to look this up?
I didn't look this up.
Okay.
He's like what? He's like 6'1", 6'2", something like that.
At
At
best,
most,
I
yeah,
mean 6 foot maybe at best.
6'1" cleats type guy. Uh, I'm gonna go with he's a pretty big dude. I'm gonna go like 305. He's big.
He's 293, and I was blown away by how heavy that was.
Wow.
Because I didn't think he could carry that much. Like, he's not tall. Like, he really is not tall. So 293 for Laws, if he can keep his quickness, that is awesome. We needed him to get to that weight. And then a true freshman, Christian Evans, coming in at 290.
Mhm. He's one that again, like I think he committed to Tech pretty early in the process, and he was a guy who they were really excited about. Tech had to fight some Big Ten schools off for, so that could be a sleeper.
Also, the kid from Hampton, Priester, 312 at defensive tackle.
That's a big dude. Aren't his
312.
arms like stupid
Yeah, and
long too?
he's tall. Yeah, exactly. He's kind of a freak, and so I'm excited to see what he can do. But there's a lot of bodies on the defensive line. We just went through a lot of names, and I didn't even name them all.
Yeah.
So as for offense, just a couple names here. Carter Stallard, you saw him in person, 6'8", 335, absolutely massive, heaviest guy on the team. Brody Meadows, 6'7", 332, so not too far behind. Remack, the transfer, 6'6", 317. They said he looks absolutely enormous in person. And he's a starter at tackle, you think? Remack?
Thomas, I need Thomas Remack to be Joe Thomas. That's what I need.
Tomas. I think it's Tomas.
Oh,
There's no H.
Oh yeah. I need him to be Joe Thomas. That's what I need him to be.
Yeah.
That's all I ask.
The
All I
size,
ask
the
is for
size is
first ballot
close,
Hall of
right?
Fame.
I know Joe Thomas is also gigantic, but Remack's a big boy, so it's nice to have him in the fold. Finally, on the lighter side, lightest guy on the team, year 3 for Takai Heath, 163.
Skinny legend.
I mean, I know Devontae Smith wasn't very heavy, but last time I checked, Heath isn't Devontae Smith. He might need to pack on a little. Our kicker's 180, so
Got to get some beef behind that kick.
So anyway, so that's going to do it for height and weights. I'm going to put the roster on the screen as we go through some of these questions, but I'm going to frame it for Sam with just, I was surprised by this because we had a veteran team last year. We had 6 guys invited to the combine. We saw all the players at Pro Day in the picture online, but we still have 21 seniors that are, I guess, seniors or graduates, 21 that I believe to be scholarship players under the new 105. Then we have 9 more guys entering their 4th year of college football. So that's 30. And then 19 more entering their 3rd year of college football. So that's nearly 50 scholarship players that are 4 or 5 years in to their college career. That is a veteran team. So my first question for Sam, I think most agree that our top talent won't be as good as 2024. But do you think that the depth may be better this upcoming season?
I certainly think it has potential to, right? And you look at the offensive line where you have a brand new offensive line coach who in his career, I don't think has ever had a average or below average offensive line. He's always had very good offensive lines. And, I look at that roster and you have guys who showed potential, relatively highly recruited, who should be taking the next step into being role players. Aiden Lynch, Tommy Ricard, Kyle Altuner was a big time recruit. I think like a mid 4-star when he signed with West Virginia. So he's a guy who early on could be really good for you. I think like I have a little bit more. I feel a little bit better about like number 6, 7, and 8 on the offensive line. It's about how 2 through 5 work because we know Remack is going to be very good.
Yeah.
Right. So I think offensive line you feel better about, right? Quarterbacks, obviously with Kyron and Pop, you feel great about. Running backs, it's like they have enough dudes. And we know Terry and Stewart can play at a high level. We really like him. We've seen flashes.
And he's not on this list because this is just the spring roster that I put up. And it's also in order of grade. This is not in order of, who's the one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I like running backs. I feel good. I think they have the numbers. Wide receivers, bringing Donovan Green and getting Tucker Holloway back is big. You, this isn't even with a little bit more of an air raid flair. I don't think this is going to be a team that needs 6, 7 high level wide receivers. I don't think that's going to be the style of offense Virginia Tech plays. I think if there's any group on here that is starving for some depth, it would probably be linebacker. I look and I see Caleb Woodson feel really good about. I see Jaden Keller. All right, I feel fine. Caleb Spencer, that's a guy who was a safety. Now all of a sudden he's a linebacker. How does that look? And then after that, I'm like, ugh. Jordan Bass really hasn't shown it at the college level. Will Johnson, we haven't seen consistently at the college level. Jaden McDonald hasn't been able to stay on the field.
Honestly, it gets to,
it gets
I'm
low.
not knocking these guys. It gets to George Balance and Clatterball real quick.
Yeah.
Those are the guys that I think could play. Like George Balance can play a little bit.
I mean, Brett Clatterball could be in your too deep drink, but that's a linebacker I'm a little worried about.
All right, well, let me ask you my second question.
D-back, we feel good.
Yep. Leaving quarterback out of the discussion, and we're going to clump for this question. We're going to clump tight end and wide receiver together. So receivers, which position group do you feel the best about of all on the team?
I got to say wide receiver, like pass catchers. Let's call it that.
Mm-hmm.
I feel best about that. I know what I'm getting out of my 2 tight ends in Benji and HSG. Feel really good about those guys. Wide receivers, Donovan Green, a proven ACC wide receiver. Tucker Holloway, again, gives you some flashes, but it's the position that Virginia Tech has recruited by far the best over the past couple of years. And, Brody Adams and Chance Wiggins have a ton of potential. Again, I don't think this is a team that's going to throw the ball 45 times a game. So you don't need, 5, 6 guys out there. You don't need to spread the ball around a bunch. I think you're going to see a lot of tight end targets. You're going to see some running back targets. And another guy who we haven't talked about as much as Cam Seldon. Another guy who is highly rated, shows a lot of athleticism. They really like him in that slot role to kind of go into where Jalen Lane was playing last year. I just feel most confident about what I'm going to get out of those guys.
The recruit level floor at wide receiver is higher than just about anywhere else in terms of the talent that's been brought in. Because even Cam Seldon, he was a highly rated guy coming out of high school. And Donovan Green has shown flashes, just like you said, in years past. And so you add our young guys to some of these guys they brought in, along with Tucker Holloway coming back from injury. You're probably right. You said something about the tight end targets. And I think both Benji and HSG are pretty solid pass catchers from a tight end perspective.
Mm-hmm.
With this new scheme, there's kind of been some hints that there might not be as many tight end targets to go around. It might be more of running the ball and then throwing to wideouts. Like they might have to ask these guys to block more. So nobody knows for sure how that's going to play out. But I thought that was interesting when I heard that.
Yep.
Because Bowen had repeatedly talked about he wants to use the tight ends like that. He kept saying, and it happened. It definitely happened from time to time.
Yeah. I mean, Tech didn't throw the ball enough to warrant what they had at wide receiver, I don't think.
All right. So flipping the other way, which group are you most concerned about going into 2025?
Yeah, I talked about linebackers already. I mean, that's one that I just don't know. I don't know why it's been so hard for this program to find 3 damn linebackers, but I feel good about Woodson.
Now they only need 2.
I feel good about Caleb Woodson, and then I have no idea, to be honest with you. Like Jaden Keller, dude's been here 6 years, and some games he looks like the reincarnation of Vince Hall, and other games he's unplayable. So I don't know what we're going to get there.
I think that he took the step he needed to take last year, that it wasn't 2 years ago. We heard a ton, then saw nothing. 3 years ago, we heard a ton and saw nothing. Last year, we actually saw something. He made some plays. He had some nice games. So I'm expecting that to kind of come full Dax, and he'll have that senior year where he plays well. And if you have him and Woodson healthy, I feel okay. But as you said before, is it Spencer? Is it Balance? Is it Clatterball? Is it Jordan Bass, who's nursing an injury and had a little off the field issue? So Bass everyone was stoked when we got Bass, right? Like that was a nice get out of the portal, but he's a transfer. That means not everything went perfectly, right?
Yeah, and he didn't play a ton at Pitt. It's like I'm excited about Jordan Bass. It was a good get. I think there's a lot of potential there. I think if Jordan Bass is from, I don't know, Central Ohio, you're not getting as much hype around it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say I think I agree with you. You know what about wide receiver and tight end? Like I do feel good about that position. I actually feel really good about defensive back, despite all the new pieces. I think with Lovett on the outside, and then either Josh Clark or one of the other guys they brought in. Um, I'm not worried about CB and then safety. There's simply so many guys to choose from, as well as Quentin Reddish. You better not screw it up. There's
Four
got
or
to be
five of
some,
them are bound to be good.
right? There's got to be a
Yeah,
couple of them that can play. So I feel pretty good about DB.
I think the big question is last year they were able to be like, all right, Dorian Strong, you go get that guy, press man coverage the whole game. We'll figure out everything else. I don't know if they have that style of player on the defensive backs this year.
Probably not.
Probably not. I mean, I think Dante Lovett's your best bet. We'll see. But again, like there's so much the talent and guys who have played D1 football in here that you feel like they're going to be able to piece it together. Isaiah Brown Murray is a good player at ECU. We've already talked about, Ellis from New Mexico a bit, but Sherrod Koval played a lot of games at Clemson. Tyson Flowers played
and
at
had
Rice.
some injury stuff. Like
Yeah.
Koval was rounding into a really good player before he got, I
Mhm.
think he had an ACL maybe 2 years ago. I can't remember the exact injury, but it took him out for a little while.
Mhm.
But then he came back the very next season and played solid on a healing leg, knee, whatever it was. And so he's got promise. And like I said about them, look at the first, there's 4 safeties that are the oldest guys on this list. And then there's a few more peppered in there. You got to find me 2 to 3 that can play and play well, whether it's near the line of scrimmage, on the back end, if we're doing the 3 safety look, whatever. I'm just not worried about DB. I think we're going to be okay there. Most concerned, let's talk O-line just a little bit here. I have 14 listed. I think that's everyone too. I don't think we have any that are coming in. Maybe one more that's coming in, but with Remack and Altuner, you have Brody Meadows. Bob Schick is still here. Johnny Garrett's still around. I think, Ganem, you can piece a decent O-line together, and it's really going to be like, can Matt Moore hit the ground running with these guys? Are we going to see an improvement? And I certainly hope so.
Yeah, I mean, you need to, right? And I think you will see one. Again, there's a lot of guys who need to step up this year. And I think you're in a little bit of danger of one injury and you're playing somebody you don't necessarily want to play at some points. But if guys again, like I'm just looking Aiden Lynch, Tommy Ricard, Hans Hammer, if those guys are playable even, and you can give, when you're playing Wofford, if you don't have to play Remack and Schick and Meadows every down, you can play these other guys and not worry about your quarterback getting killed.
And you would hope so, because Aiden Lynch, Ricard, Davidson, Altuner, they're all redshirt freshmen. This isn't their first year at school. You would hope that you can trust those guys. At least if there is some mop-up duty this year, which please be a little bit of mop-up duty, these guys can go in there and play decently well. And I mean, there's a lot of juniors and seniors here. So Montavious Cunningham, that's a very intriguing name. And so maybe we'll talk about him in a minute. Question 4, Sam. Kyron is the no doubt QB1, correct? That's not the question, but I'm assuming correct, right? Like that's what we're all going with. Despite Pop playing well at the end of last year. Okay. What can he do this spring/spring game to make you believe he's going to take the next step in 2025?
Yeah, there's 2 things. One of them is deep ball accuracy. He has really struggled with deep ball accuracy. He overthrows receivers a lot on go routes, and he's not somebody who takes a ton of chances when you feel like there are guys open downfield. Sometimes he just doesn't see them. He needs to be able to see that process it, get the ball downfield. That's going to be huge. And the other one is throwing across the middle with some confidence. For some reason, the last year, we just never saw that from Kyron Drones. It's like the middle of the field was the no-go zone, unless it was wide, wide open. You're going to have to use the middle of the field. So those are my two things. For all that we've heard about Monty as an OC, he's going to challenge your quarterback to spread the ball around to all different levels and all different parts of the field. So you feel good about that. But we're going to have to find some explosive plays in the passing game. And that's going to come from Kyron's deep ball accuracy and his willingness to, put the ball into maybe some tight windows. A nerdy stat for you. The most highly correlated stat that's non-points related to winning is explosive plays, no matter how you measure them. If you measure them by expected points added, if you measure them by 20 yards plus, it's the number one thing. The team with more explosive plays usually wins the game.
Bill Connolly was just talking about it on Cover 3 last week.
Yeah, you're not going to get that from running the ball up the middle. Mm-hmm. So you need your quarterback to be able to push the ball downfield.
Yeah, I think if he can, and we know he dealt with the injury last year, right? And so it's impossible for us to know how much that delayed his development or just canceled out what he could do on the field. And so we were hearing that he was fitting it into tighter windows last fall and last spring. And when it came to the season, you're right. We didn't see a lot of those over the middle slants to wide open Jalen Lane. We saw a couple, but not nearly enough. And one of the best ones came when Pop was the quarterback.
Yep.
And so we need to see more of that. And I also just want to see Kyron be confident in whatever he does. I saw it too often, whether it was Vanderbilt or later in the year, where he just seemed uncomfortable. And it's hard to put into words why he looked uncomfortable. It just, you could kind of tell he wasn't in the flow of the game like he was the year before. And so whatever it takes to get him into that position of feeling like he's got a command of what we're about to do, he needs to get there. And that's him and Monty trusting each other. Because we were hearing all the right things about him and Bowen. He liked Bowen. That's one of the reason he came to Virginia Tech was to play for Tyler Bowen as the offensive coordinator. So how's it going to work with a new OC? They need to get on the same page, and it needs to happen very, very soon. But I believe in Kyron. He has all the ability to do the Brian Randall senior year, where Brian Randall didn't become beloved until his senior year. It literally took that long. He was a good player and was hard to game plan for and ran around a ton. But until his senior year, no one was sure about him. Kyron's in that position right now.
Well, that's a great callback, by the way. What was who entered campus and was getting some hype during Brian Randall's senior year?
That would be Marcus Vick.
So you have a young quarterback who comes in, wows some people they're excited about. All of a sudden, your wily vet steps it up a notch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that sounds a little familiar.
It does sound a little familiar. And speaking of that understudy, Pop Watson, did you see him do that flip?
He's kind of like, he
did a backflip after throwing a touchdown pass.
I gotta be honest, Pop Watson is going to be really fun next year.
Oh yeah.
I really do think, and I mean this in like a totally positive way, because hey, this is what college football used to be. He seems like he's a year away from being really good and really fun. Like you saw it last year. You saw these flashes, and then, oh, that looked like a freshman. He gets another year in a system. He feels good. Looks like he's doing great in the weight room to be that big at his size. Dude, I don't feel bad about the Tech quarterback room in a couple of years.
No, and it's different than last year because we had Colin Schlee transfer in, and we're like, okay, that's a nice little backup. And Schlee was fine. He was exactly what a backup is. But if you're thinking about upside and what we saw at a Pop in the UVA game and just some of the throws he can make, you don't feel like all is lost if Kyron were to have to sit out a game. Mm-hmm. That's what's nice about having Pop. And I agree with you. Like, he's going to be a starting quarterback at some point for some school.
Yeah.
And hopefully it's the Hokies a year from now. But we're thinking it's going to be Kyron going into the fall. All right, last question, Sam. One player who hasn't been a starter in the past that you really want to see have a great spring because it would change the trajectory of 2025.
Yeah, so this is going to lead into something I brought up right before the show. I think for me it's Caleb Spencer. Like he's tech didn't move him to middle linebacker because we had better options there, right? Like I can read between the lines a little bit. And he's a guy who's highly recruited. He goes to Miami and is a safety. He played special teams. He played a little bit in mop up duty. He was behind talented players, whatever. Comes to Virginia Tech and he's playing a hybrid role all of a sudden. In the two deep drink, plays a little bit, has some good games, has some not good games. Now all of a sudden he's changing positions again. And it's like, okay, dude, this is your third position. It's your third defensive coordinator. It's your second school. Like, this is, if you're going to be a good college football player, here's your chance. Yep. This is it. You're running out of eligibility. And so for me, if you can find a guy to play alongside Caleb Woodson, and it's a player like Caleb Spencer who has this rangy speed, who has some defensive back qualities and can go out and defend the pass if needed, can play a little zone defense as a linebacker. All of a sudden that elevates this team to a new level. And so for me, Caleb Spencer, if he takes the next step or two, this defense takes the next step or two. And I think he's one of the few players on this team outside of Kyron Drones becoming the next Cam Newton or something that could actually be the difference between 6 wins and 8 wins.
I'm going to go with a defensive line pick. And part of me wants to go with Jonkum or Bell, but they are transfers, and that doesn't really fit the intent of my question. It's kind of a guy that we've known about or heard about that we want to break out, and then that means his 2025 will be awesome. And so I'm going to go with Copeland at DT because we need a game wrecker. And I don't know how many Tech fans realize how much of a wrecker Peebles was last year.
Yeah, so good.
He's a very, very good player, a chance to be the top player drafted from the Hokies this upcoming draft. And without him, unless someone like Gilliam or Copeland step up, I think we're going to see the D-line take a big step back. And I think if you can get one of your defensive tackles, and particularly a guy who's a freak in the weight room, to play with a high motor and wreck stuff inside, it'll change everything for our defense. If a D-line is playing well, it makes the rest of the defense play well. And so Kamari Copeland would be my pick.
Yeah, and I think something as good as Peebles was last year, and as good as Fuga was for so many years at Virginia Tech was missing a guy who could eat up blocks. And that's Tim Settle did that phenomenally. And it's what's led to him being a multi-year pro and getting a ton of playing time and playing well with the Texans right now is if you have a defensive tackle who can take away 2 of your blockers, that is huge. That completely changes the play and it ruins everything for the offense. Kamari Copeland can be that guy, and he might not put up a ton of stats, but when you watch the film, you're he's wrecking the game. It's kind of what we saw out of Emmett Laws in the Minnesota game.
Where that's another one.
He didn't have a ton of stats, but if you were watching the game, you could see oh, that guy is pushing 2 offensive linemen a yard down the field.
And the only reason it's not Laws is because of the age and the maturity, the body maturity that Copeland has. And maybe Laws will be the guy. I mean, there's a lot of good options. And I wanted to take Jonkum and Bell because they've produced, they have produced at the college level to a very high degree. If we can get 3/5 of that production, 4/5 of that production while they're rotating with other guys, we're going to have a nice presence off of the edge. And so I just want to see what happens with these guys at the edges and the D-line and how that works with the linebackers, because this new look defense, 2 down linemen, 3 down linemen, sometimes 4 down linemen, we're going to be changing up formations all the time. And I used to hate when UVA would stand up their outside linebackers or their outside guys and bring them on us.
Wasn't it Snowden?
The worst.
Terrifying.
Yeah. And that's what you want Jonkum to be, right?
Real quick before I go, we're going to do a beer break.
Yeah, let's do a beer break.
Okay, cool. Can I go grab can we Can I grab my other
I'll
beer
talk
bottle?
for a second because I'm going to promo what we got coming up next week.
Sick.
All right. So on Monday, we're having Mike Burnup on the show, legendary voice of the Hokies, or should I say, the legendary guy next to the voice of the Hokies. And Mike is the man. I can't wait to get some war stories from him and ask him about the team last year and so on and so forth. And then on the 7th, the week before the spring game, we're having Colby Crawford on the show. We had him on last year. He gave us some great insight. He's going to come back. So the next 2 weeks are packed with some good guests. And with Colby, we didn't really do this tonight, but we'll talk a little bit more about the new coaches and how that might be affecting the styles and the schemes and everything else. All right. Did you grab a beer? Are you going to get a beer?
I'm going to go grab it really quick while you do your beer review.
Cool. Sounds good. Since it is opening day, I happen to find this beer called The Gang Beats Boggs. If you guys, anyone's an Always Sunny fan, you'll recognize the notch marks here that in the show, they were all wearing white t-shirts on a plane. They're trying to drink a case of beer to be like Wade Boggs, the legendary story of him drinking a case of beer while flying across country. Well, this is a German Kolsch. It is delicious. I got it in my McAdoo's glass. Very nice and light. The Phillies did beat the Nats today. I'm not bragging. It went into extras. It was a good game, but we're here. We're in baseball season now. And this Gang Beats Boggs, I would recommend this thing. Where's this from? It is from Twin Elephant Brewing Company, New Jersey. All right. It's a local. I found it tonight, but I thought this was perfect. The beer, the shirt on the can is stained. If you haven't seen the episode of Always Sunny, The Gang Beats Boggs, highly recommend it. Great episode. What you got over there, Sam?
All right. We got 2 for the people. You'll find out in a little bit as we go on our next couple of rants why that is. I started off with, I've had it a few times on the show. My last one, the Reviver Red India Pale Ale from Star Hill. Very good. I enjoy it. This one is from a pseudo local. I think it's brewed in Atlanta, but they have a bunch of stuff and a big presence here in the 757. It is the Kick Flipper West Coast style IPA from New Realm. Pretty cool can here. It's got a dolphin kick flipping on a skateboard. So that's pretty cool.
It's got like a 90s look to it.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. A little creepy, but pretty awesome. It is a really light colored West Coast IPA. Like it almost looks like a Pilsner.
Yeah, it looks light.
It is really light, but it's 7%. So it's got a little kick to it. But it's really good. Like it goes down super easy and it's super light. But if you're somebody who likes the hoppy flavor but want a light beer, it's a perfect marriage between the two of those, and you don't get that a lot. So if you're looking for something that is like a better tasting, nicer beer, but is also nice and light for the summer, the Kick Flipper from New Realm, great beer. I give it a 4 because I think it executes something that I don't see a lot. And so I thought it was pretty cool.
I would give this a 4 as well. I know with these Pilsners or Kolsches or just lighter beers in general, they're harder for them to get higher ratings on Untapped, but I'm not afraid to give this a high rating. It gets a 4. I have been to that New Realm, talking about your beer, at least the location in Virginia Beach, and it is an awesome place. It is a really cool spot to get a beer. All right, let's move to basketball. And before we actually talk about some portal entries and other stuff, we need to address Whit Babcock's comments yesterday. He talked a little bit about the new distribution coming down from the House case, how we're going to have 20.5 million and how that might be distributed. And what he said is the breakdown will probably be 75% football, 15% basketball. If you do the quick math on that, that's 3 million for basketball. And so that's a nice little number, and it can be potentially supplemented with NIL. But that is not the most talked about thing that he said. When asked about the performance on the court this year and how did you fund football and take money from basketball and put all your resources to football, he said, no, that's not what happened. We simply underestimated the basketball market, and that we definitely did not take from football or take from basketball to give to football. And later on in that article that they wrote for TSL, I think it was Andy Bitter wrote for TSL, he said that Mike gave him a figure, meaning Mike Young gave him a figure of the amount of money he needed to field a quote unquote competitive team. And then that figure was obviously too low because it was 70% behind Clemson, a conference mate who ended up making the tournament and having a really good year. So, taking all that into account, Sam, your reaction to the commentary that we were 70% behind Clemson and that it was because of Mike Young's number that he handed Whit Babcock.
Yeah. So for the people out there who don't know, my day job, this is not my full-time job. In fact, um, my day job is a financial and data analyst, and I do a lot of new product modeling and cost accounting. And then I also do a lot of budgeting and FP&A stuff. And I'll tell you what, if I was 70% off, if my model was 70% off on a new product for cost accounting, I probably wouldn't have a job anymore.
Mm.
70% is kind of tough.
Yeah,
Like
that's bad.
mathematically, you would think you just guessed the right number roughly within 70%. And also, I don't think Mike Young is an expert in the NIL market by any stretch of the means. And so for me, it points to a complete, what does the NCAA call it? A complete lack of institutional control that you're that far off.
Yeah.
So that's my thought on that.
And Mike Young deserves blame for how the season went. He's the head coach. It's his
Right.
program. He deserves blame. But for Whit to kind of a little bit throw Mike under the bus on that is inappropriate because he's the AD, meaning he is the money guy, right? And if he's not the money guy, the people that he hires and work with Mike are the money people. And to
Yeah.
be that far off is a complete failure and negligent by the athletic department as a whole, not Mike Young specifically, but everyone as a whole to be that far behind and misjudge the competition that much. And so, well, first of all, I think he's lying. I think they
Yeah, I
had
think it's total bullshit.
I think they had money and they decided to use it for football rather than use it for basketball. I think Tim Thomas said it's a case of semantics, and it probably is.
And that's
So
okay. Like would you have rather him said, like, hey, we went all in on football
I would
for a
have
few
rather him
football
said that
reasons. It didn't work out. We lost a couple close
because
games.
at least
Sorry.
that's a
Like,
plan.
yeah.
Like this just is nope, we were just dumb. Like we didn't fund football too much. We were just dumb when it came to basketball.
I think this is a reason that, and first off, I'll rewind a bit back to how he said the 20.5 million is going to be allocated. And what I want people to remember is that 20.5 million is the amount of the athletic department itself can toss out to players. Part of that 20.5 million is through the donations to help fund that. And then on top of that 20.5 million, you can NIL your way to high heaven if you want. But for a program like Virginia Tech, that's very grassroots funded, you're probably not going to have too much more than that 20.5 million. Probably a
Probably not.
few million more. But the shares of like 75% football, 15% men's basketball, 5% women's basketball, 5% other sports, almost across the board, every AD is going to say that. And I think pretty much every AD is going to go ahead and say, yeah, 20.5 million is what we're spending. Even if they know it's more than that, because what you don't want to do as an athletic director is say, yeah, we got 25 million in the bank to pay these guys. Because all that'll do is trigger the people down the road to do a fundraising kick to get up to that level.
That,
So
and it's going to mean like, oh, I'm the quarterback. I want X percentage of that. Like it just leads to a lot of different things.
So there's a little like, you're going to hear Whit Babcock say a lot of numbers with this NIL stuff, and it's going to match almost every major AD in the country.
And what he actually said, because he didn't say those numbers, what he said was it matches the breakdown from the house case residuals or something. Basically, whatever breakdown they gave it is what he said. We're going to basically match that. So these numbers are not set in stone, and they'll probably change year to year depending on how many Cooper flags you get. I said
Yeah,
Cooper
I mean,
flag
if
on
there's a
the last pod a couple times, but yeah, the whole thing, the whole reason we're talking about this is because yet again, Whit Babcock just comes off not looking great. And I'm really Sam, I don't think I'm purposely trying to find things to make him sound dumb or to make people hate him or anything like that. But he had a snide remark about social media in there. He throws Mike Young under the bus about the figure and, underestimated the market by 70%. Like, none of that makes you sound good. Like, none of that.
Yeah, it does. As much as I want a forward-facing and open and honest athletic director, it does seem like every time we get a comment, it's not great. It
It's
doesn't
being
make it
picked
look
apart.
great.
It's going to get picked apart, and he makes it
Yeah.
easy to pick it apart.
Yeah, man. I don't have total faith in the operation right now.
How could you?
And I don't, yeah, I don't know, man. We haven't even gotten to the damn Nike contract. Like,
Yeah, so the Nike contract was another thing that came up. People, if you're plugged in at Virginia Tech, you're aware of the idea that our Nike contract hasn't been so good over the past 20 years. It was kind of a sweetheart deal for Nike or whatever. That's what we've all been led to believe. And we're up for a redo on that. And I think he said something to the degree of like, it's not going to break the bank. Okay, tell everyone it's not going to be. He basically just said it's not going to be a good contract. So I don't know. And then people were complaining about that because supposedly he could have gotten a better deal a couple of years ago. I don't know the truth to that, but we're not going to the highest bidder. It's going to be Nike again, and don't expect it to break the bank, Sam. Don't you dare expect it to break the bank.
I won't. You know what, Pete? I for sure am not expecting us to get a good Nike deal.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised we're rolling with New Balance next year.
I wish we would have renegotiated that Nike deal in like 2011. The last time we were good.
Dude.
And then Metallica came up, and Metallica is going to pay the school $1 million. So we're going to make $1 million, and everything else goes to Metallica.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have negotiating power in this instance.
No, and I'm just really excited to watch somebody perform up to expectations on Lane Stadium.
All right.
That's going to be sick.
that will end the negative Nancy Whit Babcock portion of the podcast. We'll move on to Hokies in the portal. Ronnie Brown, Jaden Young, Patrick Wessler, Rex Steiner, and Ryan Jones all hopped in. If you want a little bit more detail on this, I talked about it with Ed a couple of nights ago. It's on the feed. But Sam, you look at that list of names hopping in the portal.
Deuces.
There go the balloons.
There go the balloons. I say that kind of facetiously. Like,
who are you going to be missing from this list?
Brown was a guy who was kind of promising and seemed to fit the scheme well. Another example of a guy who like gets to Virginia Tech, works his way in the lineup, and then he gets hurt a little bit. And then the dreaded foot injury. Virginia Tech has more foot injuries than any basketball program in the country. And then gets sick for a couple of weeks. And then it's just like, oh, this isn't working out. So, that happens. I think he's really the guy that you're like, probably wanted to keep him. Other than that, I think Mike Young in this program needed a fresh start. And I think they're I think they're ready for new faces in Hunthurst.
We saw Rex Steiner and Jaden Young play a lot of minutes and in some instances score a lot of points. Both had pretty nice flashes, but then just long stretches of not being productive. And most notably for Jaden Young, the 0 for 11 from 3 in the final game of the season. I think as much as I like those guys for choosing Tech and being on the team and gutting out a tough season, they are replaceable players. I think we can find players in the portal or coming out of high school that can match their production and or exceed their production in the years to come.
Yeah, like
Brown, I think I agree with you. Highest upside player, fit Mike Young's scheme very well.
There were so many
disappointed that he didn't stay because he could handle the ball, he could shoot.
Yeah,
he was versatile. He was a good glue guy along with Tyler Johnson to fill in the wing.
And like Jaden Young, there's so many things about Jaden Young's game that I loved ever since he was a recruit, and it's like it never totally got put together. And you saw flashes of it when he scored like 20 plus in a couple games.
He scored 26 and 27 in like 2 consecutive games or 2 games apart or something like that.
I mean, it's like so good. And it's just like, but it never got put together for a bit. So I think this program needs a fresh start. It's felt like they've been due for one for a while.
And we're getting a little bit of that on the coaching staff too,
Mhm,
because Christian Webster left the program. He's been
mhm.
here since Buzz, right?
Yep,
And so
yep.
that's a change. KG is still here and he's still recruiting. And I love KG. I'm happy to have him, Kevin Gildner. And Mike actually put out on, I shouldn't be calling him Mike. Coach Young put out
My
on,
buddy, my good old buddy Mike.
yeah, I have met him, but no, we're not good friends. He's still coach. Great video from him today on the timeline. If you haven't seen it, I recommend it.
Mhm.
He basically said like, this year sucked. We this is not the standard. I'm gonna do better. We're gonna be back like that. And so it was fun. It was
Yeah.
encouraging just to see that video. I thought it was a nice piece they put out. And so I don't know who's gonna replace Webby, but I think we're all gonna be pulling in the same direction, knowing what we know now. And
Yeah.
I'm excited to see what happens. Last thing on that is just your boy Toby's back. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Well, actually, no, I shouldn't say that. I don't know that for sure. But he hasn't announced that he's gone, which is good. So I'm hoping that we pay him. And I call him your boy because you do root for VCU, and that's where he came from. But we're
Yeah.
hoping to get Toby back, Ben Hammond, Tyler Johnson, and Jaden Shute. Like none of those guys have said they're entering the portal. I think that we're hoping to get them back, and that's a nice nucleus for next year.
Mhm.
If
Yeah, I think
if
it
they
is.
stay.
I think it is. And you also like Gerdak is a guy. He's a 4-star freshman who they're bringing in from Gonzaga High School up in DC, who is a big man who has a lot of hype around him and plays at the highest level of high school basketball, really in the country. And so you feel good
Gonzaga
about
High
a
School, yeah.
yeah, you feel good about a guy like that coming in. And then from around this area, Sinceri Jones is a freshman coming in who has like he's like a long, lanky athlete guy who could be a good piece in the right system. So I have faith that with a better budget, with a better sense of what they need to fill in, that they are going to build this roster, build it better. I will say
Build
though,
back better.
build yeah, sure, I guess. Build we have Get Better from Buzz Young.
Yeah.
Buzz Williams, excuse me, I'm getting him
Yeah.
wrong. And then we have Build It in Blacksburg from Coach Chef. Build Back Better
Yeah.
from Mike Young.
And we have It's Jover.
It's Jover. Yeah, I just it'll be fun. But I will say, like 3 million of the rev share to basketball. That's roughly the number, right?
Yeah.
VCU committed to 5 plus. 5 is the minimum that they said.
We need to get that round ball
U
club up and running.
UVA is gonna be up there too. Like UVA is gonna not deal with that again. So just showing you what the competition is like here.
And Will
There's
Wade
still
and
a ways
NC
to go.
State are going to be doing some stuff.
If the FBI is not in Raleigh, North Carolina next month, Will Wade isn't doing his job. Will Wade needs to commit like embezzlement. I want.
He's gonna like honestly. When I heard Rothstein talking about Will Wade, like I got jacked up. Like I was like, "Damn, that sounds great!" Like
it'll be entertaining.
Yeah,
There's that.
Yeah. Okay, the women, their season's over. Portal is open. We got word Karis and Carly are coming back, our two best players. So I put out on Twitter, our two best hoopers are back for the ladies, something like that.
Mhm.
And someone commented, yeah, the two best players on a team that didn't go to the tournament. And it's like, I mean, really? That's what we're gonna do in Coach Duffy's first year with two like true sophomores. Like you're getting them back for their junior year, and that's what you're gonna say. Like
Yeah.
they're awesome. They're awesome players. If you fill in around them with a year older Kale and Mackenzie Nelson, and I don't know, Suffering comes back. I mean, who knows? Like that team could be so good. So that reaction, just like, do we not think that players develop year over year anymore?
I fully trust Megan Duffy. I'm in full trust mode with her. Like the way she acts on the sidelines, the way she's recruiting right now, the way that the players who were on that team this year like rallied around her, I'm all in on her. I'm all in. So whatever she thinks is best, I'm good with.
Yeah, no, I have a good feeling. They barely missed the tournament in year one.
I'm sure I'm sure they wanted to keep like Lonnie White and some of these other players,
No,
right?
well,
But
Lonnie
that's
White wasn't one of the ones that
yes.
jumped in, right? It
I
was
think she jumped in
Ramaya.
today.
Oh, she jumped in today. I
Hmm.
might have missed that one.
Yeah.
I do like Lonnie White, but
Yeah.
9-9 in the ACC in year one in the toughest conference in college basketball for the women. And so I like you said, full faith in Coach Duffy to get us to the tournament next year, especially with those two really good players coming back. Wrestling, I went to day one of the Nationals in Philadelphia. It was awesome. I would recommend that event to anyone next year, Sam. It's in Cleveland. Cleveland, your town. I may be going next year.
Great beer town.
So great beer
Great beer
town.
town.
My buddy Brian wants to go. We had him on the podcast a couple weeks ago to talk wrestling, and it was so much fun. There's 8 mats on the first day, and just action everywhere. All people from different schools cheering. A lot of Penn State, obviously being in Philly, but a lot of Penn, a lot of there was Iowa State, Iowa. Who else? Oklahoma State had a ton of fans. Dude, and the finals, like Caleb obviously didn't win his final. That was shitty because it looked like he had a takedown at one point in that match, didn't get it, ended up losing in the national final. Eddie Ventresca loses in the semis, and then he loses a consolation match, but does end up 5th and goes All-American. So great comeback year for Eddie V. And then McGonigal actually got pinned in the morning, like legit pinned, which doesn't happen so much, but does happen, especially in the Nationals. And then came back and became an All-American that afternoon. So great fight for McGonigal. We got 3 All-Americans this year. The event was so cool. I wish I could have gone to the final night, even though Caleb, I said on my pod on the episode last week that my mother's 70th was that night. So we're having a celebration. I'm watching the finals on my phone, but my buddy went and he got to see Gable Stevenson get upset.
Okay, can you explain that? I watched a little. I watched some of the finals night. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I walked away from that being so utterly confused at the sport of wrestling.
It's very
And
hard.
I
to
think I'm
figure
done.
out.
I think I'm done.
No, you're not done. You're not done.
I will support the Hokies, but I think Sam personally is out on college wrestling because that shit makes no sense. The scoring is completely subjective. We have WWE guys out here wrestling.
Yeah.
The entire Penn State team is Olympians or something like that. Like, this makes no sense. This also, why are there this many 125, 130-pound college guys?
Because they all starve themselves and they have because they got to be this weight. But what I was going to say,
I don't get it.
I think I'm losing it. Hold on. But yeah, I lost it. It's gone. It's like as if you were watching a football game and the entire like hour is targeting rulings where you don't understand, is it targeting or is it not? That's what watching a wrestling match is like, because it's so hard to figure out, is that a takedown? Why are they throwing the brick? Like there's a lot of stuff that's happening.
It's not for me.
I love the physicality of the sport. I love the excitement of the sport. And when Wyatt Hendrickson upset Gable, like that was incredible. One of the biggest upsets in wrestling history. And I wish I had been there for it, but it sounded like it was electric. Better luck next year for the Hokies. TJ hopped in the portal, TJ Stewart yesterday. And then the day before that, we lost our top commit to Penn State. Go figure. So not a great week for wrestling, but I have full faith in Tony Roby like I do in Megan Duffy. So I think we'll be all right there. Let's go to Diamond Sports, Sam. Baseball, 16-8, I think. 4-5 in the ACC now.
Are they 16? I don't even know what their overall record is, and I watch every pitch. So
post Louisville, right?
Post Louisville. We played Radford, 17-8.
Okay.
17's right. Yep. Beat Radford in the Sharkies Classic, the greatest rivalry in Southwest Virginia. What a huge series win against Louisville. Louisville's number 16 in the country. They stayed at number 18 in the country, I believe they are right now. 2-1 series win. Really good stuff. Brett Renfro was solid as heck on Friday.
That guy's a beast, man.
Brett Renfro is so good. And then Sam Tackett is early ACC Player of the Year. He's hitting the crap out of the ball. 3 intentional walks on Sunday. Got the Barry Bonds treatment. insane, unheard of in college baseball to intentionally walk somebody. So this team is starting to hit their stride here. They lost a few tough games to NC State and Georgia Tech, but 4-5 in the ACC. They're right in the middle of the pack. That's really where they need to be in order to get to the regionals. A really tough series at Wake Forest, a very good offensive team this weekend. So pitching will need to be on.
Yeah.
Luckily, Logan Eigenrich, the Sunday starter, he should be back to full potential. He's only been able to have a couple innings. He should be back. It's not an unwinnable series for Virginia Tech. I mean, Wake Forest
They can win it.
Yeah, they lost the game to Miami, who's not very good. They just lost to Liberty in the midweek. So, and then they just lost their series 1-2 to Clemson, a very good Clemson team. But they can win the series. You want to be able to get a game and stay afloat in the ACC. Again, the goal is 500 to slightly above 500 in the ACC, especially this year. So they're playing really well, getting in the groove of things. They really need Matt and Clement back. I haven't heard a timeline for him to get back, but he would be that third starter that they really need.
I was going to say, tell the listeners and me what position he plays.
Matt and Clement's a starting pitcher,
okay.
and he's been hurt. So that's why Virginia Tech has two of their weekend starters are true freshmen. Jake Marciano on Saturdays and Logan Eisenrich on Sundays.
Marciano's ERA is not so good right now. But
yeah, last week was the first week that he really got hit hard. But that Louisville offense is special.
Yeah.
So it happens, right? And you move on to
talking about Wake Forest. Was it just last year where Wake came in with all these expectations and they kind of like sucked for a while to start the year, and then they turned it on right when we had to play them later in the year?
Yeah. Wake Forest had like two pitchers that should have been in AA baseball probably and were in college baseball for some reason. And then they call them Rake Forest because they always have 3 or 4 guys who are just mashers at the plate. So they're a very good team. They're always super talented with guys who are about to get drafted.
Well, what I'm saying is, are we going to get the earlier part of Wake Forest this year where like they're not locked in yet?
I think they're locked in. Like they lead the ACC in a lot of the advanced metrics right now. But they're not like last year when they were pitching at their peak, they were like unbeatable. They had professional pitchers on their team last year. You couldn't hit them. This year, they don't have that pitching. So I think you can get into some bigger games. Over the last 5 games, Wake Forest has allowed 8+ runs. So outside of the Elon game, they played Elon in the midweek, but against Miami, Liberty, and Clemson, over 8 runs a game. So Virginia Tech can score in this game. It's just going to be about the pitching and how they play.
Yeah. Overall, the Louisville series win was fantastic.
Awesome.
Really, really good.
Survive Wake Forest. Keep going. Keep winning the midweeks. Virginia Tech is undefeated in midweeks. Not a lot of teams across the country can say that.
All right. Softball, 25-5, 5-1 in the ACC. They've won 6 in a row. Beat Kentucky, swept Louisville, moved up to number 12 in the poll. There's a couple different polls, but the USA ESPN poll, whatever it is, they were 12. So softball is doing work right now, man. 25-5 is no joke.
They're good. Yeah, this was like their off week. There's like an off week that you get in softball. This was their off week. Huge series coming up this weekend in Blacksburg against Stanford. Very good Stanford team.
Yeah.
So but for the Virginia Tech softball, they're so good. They're not at like must win scenarios. It's like opportunity to resume build. That's what they're dealing with each weekend. So yeah, they're really good.
Yeah, hopefully they can get a win or two against Stanford. But that's going to do it for the show. We cover just about everything. Only an hour and 15 minutes. That's not too shabby, Sam. With a beer break and all that good stuff.
Covered a whole lot.
Yeah. So, like I said, Mike Burnup on Monday. That'll get posted late Monday night and Tuesday morning. And then Colby the week after that. And then we got spring game, which there is no spring jam that's going to happen this year. And that's a little sad. We were talking to the boys this week. Pat and Billy are looking like they're not going to be down. Even if they are down, there's not going to be the typical spring jam at the Cinnabon. A little bit of change of ownership, a little bit of change in lives of some of the people that
Yeah.
work for the Suns,
Yeah.
maybe someone on this show. And
Yeah.
so it's just not working out the same way. But I'm hoping to get down there still. And I'm hoping to maybe do a little live something with some of the other boys. So we'll see what shakes out of it the next couple of weeks. But if nothing else, we are going to be getting you excited for
Yes,
spring
and
football.
we're gonna keep doing stuff like that. Like it just didn't work out spring game weekend, like Atlanta weekend for South Carolina game. We're gonna
Ooh,
try to
yeah.
do something. We're gonna try to do something else middle of the season. It's just spring weekend. I'm planning a move here in the next couple of months. Pat's planning a move and a new job in a couple of months. Uh, life life happens,
Yep.
but
Yes,
yeah.
indeed. So
I
make
will
sure.
be I will be in town for the Metallica concert though.
Oh, you're going to Metallica.
Oh heck yeah, field
What's the
tickets.
date of that? I'm not going to that. What's the date?
May 6th. It's a Wednesday.
That's when I'm going to South America. That's the wedding I have. In fact, speaking of, it's Jover. My good friend Joey is getting married, and I got to get one of those shirts that says it's Jover, because what a
Mhm.
perfect thing. His name's Joe.
Yeah.
Like his life is Jover now. I need to get him one of those shirts. But yeah, we're going to South America for his wedding that weekend, the first weekend of May. So I'm very much looking forward to that. But
Yeah.
anyway, enough about that. Make sure you're subscribed. Sense of Saturday on YouTube, Too Deep on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and also check out Billy and Pat stuff, Sons of Saturday feed on Apple and Spotify.
And also check out sonsofsat.com.
Mm.
That's
It's where we post all of our episodes. Sam's article. Sam's been writing a ton
Yep,
about
I'm
the baseball
covering
team.
baseball. We got Josh is covering softball, and then we just announced today, welcome back to the team, Robert Irby, lead football and sports business columnist.
Oh,
So
I know
Robert
that guy.
Irby, yeah, Robert Irby is going to be writing. His style of writing is so fun to read. And he wrote a great article about ACC basketball and its potential merger with the Big East. He's going to be doing a lot of big football stuff with us and sports business articles, which is his main professional forte. So, really exciting stuff happening with our website here over the spring and summer.
Yes, indeed. All right, you got all the thing. I already said everything I need to say. If you want to send us an email, it's 2deepbt@gmail.com. Any comments or concern, please feel free. I still get a couple emails here and there. And until next time, go Hokies.
Go Hokies.